Bro, the 2025 AFCON semifinals are officially here. And with that being said, in today's video, I'm going to be giving you guys my two semifinal predictions where we have Senegal, the 2021 AFCON winners, against Egypt, the best team in African history. And then we have Nigeria, the 2013 AFCON winners, against Morocco, the hosts of the tournament. These semifinal games are absolutely crazy. Honestly, this has been a fantastic tournament so far. We've seen some crazy goals. We've seen a few upsets as well, but most of all, we have seen some crazy performances. And I think that these four teams have been the best teams of the tournament. But before I get into this video, if you're not already subscribed to the channel, I'm so close to 6,000 subscribers. I can almost touch it. So please, if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe to the channel. It will help me so much. And I'm setting a challenge. Everyone that's watching this video, press the subscribe button and let's see how many subscribers I can go up by the end of this video. But without further ado, let's get right into these predictions. Starting with the first game, we have Senegal against Egypt. The last time that both of these teams made it to an AFCON final was in 2021, where Senegal were surprisingly enough coming up against Egypt. Now that game finished in a 0-0 draw, but Senegal ended up winning on penalties. Obviously, we all remember the crazy lasers shining at Salah, and Egypt did lose that game. But now is redemption time for Egypt. Now is Salah's turn to beat Sadio Mane and Senegal. And can they do it? That's what I'm going to be talking about in today's video. Now, let's first start off by looking at both of these teams so far in this tournament. Now, in my opinion, I do think that Senegal has been the better of these two teams. So far in this tournament, both teams have won 4 games and drew 1 game. But Senegal, in terms of scoring, have been absolutely incredible. And in my opinion, the only team that has been better scoring than Senegal has been Nigeria. We saw Senegal score 3 goals against Botswana. They scored 3 goals against Benin, and they also scored 3 goals against Sudan. But on the other side of things, we've also seen a few poorer games from Senegal where they drew 1-1 against DR Congo, and also in the quarterfinals against Mali where they won 1-0. They weren't that convincing. But Egypt also have had a few games where they didn't look that convincing. Obviously, in the first game of the tournament, they ended up beating Zimbabwe 2-1, but they weren't that good in that game, and Zimbabwe did finish last place in the group. And then later on in the group stages, they ended up drawing 0-0 against Angola. Now, to be fair, in that game, they did start a lot of bench players, but it still wasn't the best result by Egypt. Now, I do think both of these teams do have strengths and weaknesses. In my opinion, I do think Egypt's manager, Hossam Hassan, is a better manager tactically than Pape Thiaw. First of all, I think Hossam Hassan has obviously been a manager for this Egyptian team for much longer than Pape Thiaw, because Aliou Cisse was the long-term manager for Senegal for the last decade or so, and Pape Thiaw has only taken over within recent years. And with that being said, Pape Thiaw, I think, is a good manager, but I do think there's a lot of things he can improve on. And one of the main things that I've noticed with Senegal in many of their games is that at the start of the game and at the start of the second half, they do not perform well. We saw it against DR Congo where they were so dominant throughout the whole entire game, but for the first 15 or 20 minutes of the second half, Senegal didn't look like the same team, and that is ultimately when DR Congo scored their goal. And we also saw it in the round of 16 against Sudan, where once again, Senegal were the dominant team throughout the whole game, but at the start of the game, for the first 15 or so minutes, they were not performing good, and that's also when Sudan scored their goal. So the only goals that Senegal have conceded in this tournament have been either at the start of the game or at the start of the second half. And for some reason, in those first 10 to 15 minutes of each half, they don't perform well. I feel like this is a managerial change that Pape Thiaw needs to make, and it's something that he needs to instruct to his players so that they can perform better right at the start of the game and right at the start of the second half. Those time frames are definitely moments of the game where Egypt can really punish Senegal. And with that being said, Egypt are a team that can win based off moments. In their quarterfinal game against Ivory Coast were the dominant team throughout majority of the game. They had more possession, they had more shots, they were the dominant team, but Egypt won that game off moments. They won that game off counter-attacking goals, and they won that game off set pieces. And that is where Egypt can really hurt Senegal. So I think if Senegal do have any lapses of judgment in this game, Egypt can definitely punish them. But I do still think that Senegal are a strong team. If you look at both of these teams compared against each other, I think Senegal have a stronger goalkeeper. I think Senegal have a stronger defense. In the midfield, it is pretty similar, but in the attack, once again, I do think Senegal beats Egypt. Now, Egypt do have great attackers, Ashour, Mohamed Salah, Omar Mahmoush, But so far in this tournament, they have been a little bit inconsistent, and I do feel like Hossam Hassan once again needs to make some changes to that starting line, because playing with Salah and Mahmoud only at the top is going to be very difficult against a very physical side in Senegal. Now, with that being said, since Senegal are a very physical side, they do pick up a lot of cards. We've seen Senegal get so many yellow cards in this tournament, and we also saw Koulibaly get a red card. And the only team that has gotten more cards in this tournament so far has been Mali, who obviously got 3 red cards in 3 games in a row. But other than that, Senegal have been a little bit too physical, and sometimes they can get cards. And with that being said, Egypt are a team who like to dribble, they like to hold possession. And with that being said, if they do end up frustrating Senegal, it is possible that we could see a red card in this game. Now, with all this information, it is finally time to give my prediction for this game. I think this is going to be a very, very close game. Obviously, there is a little bit of rivalry in this game, as Senegal did end up beating Egypt in the 2021 AFCON final. And with that being said, Egypt are going to want their revenge. But for some reason, I can only see Senegal winning this game. Yes, I do think Egypt have a good team. They definitely have a good chance. But in these predictions, I'm going to predict that Senegal beat Egypt and go to the final, as they will win 2-1. Moving on to the next match, we have Nigeria against Morocco. Honestly, I'm so excited for this match. I feel like every single match that both of these teams have been playing, there's been some crazy goals. Nigeria have been the top goal scorers of the tournament. They've scored 14 goals in 5 games, meaning that on average, they're averaging almost 3 goals in every single game they play. But Morocco have been crazy as well. They've been scoring bangers. We saw 2 bicycle kicks by El Kabi. We see Brahim Diaz out dribbling every single team. So this is going to be a very entertaining game. Going into this tournament, if I look at both of these teams, I would say that the biggest weakness in both sides is probably their defense. But honestly, so far in this tournament, I feel like Morocco defensively have been very, very underrated, and they still haven't conceded a goal from open play. The only goal they've conceded in this tournament was that one penalty goal against Mali where they drew 1-1. But other than that, against Cameroon, against Tanzania, against Zambia, and also against Comoros, they kept clean sheets, which is absolutely incredible. And with that being said, that is a slight area of weakness for Nigeria. Now, I'm not saying their defense is bad. I think Ajayi, Calvin Bassey are incredible center backs, and their goalkeeper is pretty decent as well. But we have seen them concede multiple goals in some games, and especially in that game against Tunisia where they were winning 3-0. Within the last 20 minutes of the game, they ended up conceding 2 goals. Now, I will say that in the knockout stages, Nigeria's defense has been much better, where they kept a clean sheet and scored 4 goals against Mozambique, and then they also kept another clean sheet while scoring 2 goals when they beat Algeria in the quarterfinals. But if we look back to the group stages, we cannot forget where they conceded in every single game against Uganda, against Tanzania, and also against Tunisia, who are all teams that realistically Nigeria should be beating pretty easily. Now, if we look at the strengths of both of these teams, it's obviously their attack. Let's start off with Nigeria, because their attack, in my opinion, has been the best attack in this AFCON. If you look at players like Ademola Lookman, he's already gotten 7 goal contributions in his first few games. If you look at players like Victor Osimhen, Akor Adams, they've both gotten multiple goals and multiple assists in this tournament. And we can't forget about Nigeria's midfield, because that is the heart and soul of this team. Iwobi, Ndidi, and Onyeka have been phenomenal in this AFCON. I think they've been the best midfield partnership out of any other nation, and especially Iwobi. He's been going crazy. He's getting every single assist to the assist. His progressive passes, his helping in the defensive end, he's been everywhere on the pitch, and he is having the tournament of his life. Now, on the other hand, like I already mentioned, Morocco have a very good attack, but only 2 players on Morocco's team have been scoring most of the goals, El Kabi and Brahim Diaz. Brahim Diaz scoring 5 goals and El Kabi getting another 3. But they're pretty much the only players on Morocco's team who are scoring goals. The only other goal that they've scored was from Saibadi in their last match. So with that being said, this does limit them in their attack. When a team like Nigeria is scoring goals from 5 or 6 players, Morocco, on the other hand, is pretty much only scoring from 2. And yes, they have other good players that can score goals, but we've seen Ezal Zuli, where he hasn't really had that final product. We've seen some of their midfielders like El Kanous and El Ainaoui, where yes, they're amazing players, but once again, they're lacking that final product. And like I already said, I do think this slightly limits Morocco against a team like Nigeria. Obviously, Morocco do have the home support as this tournament is being played in Morocco, and like everyone says, that is your 12th man. Having the home support is a big advantage. But I don't think Nigeria have really crumbled at all without having the home support. They versed multiple North African teams who obviously have much more support in this AFCON as it is being played in Northern Africa than a team like Nigeria, and they haven't crumbled at all. We saw them against Algeria where they were so comfortable on the ball, they dominated possession and they suffocated Algeria. And I do think with the physicality of Nigeria, that is a strength that they have over some of these North African teams like Algeria and like Morocco as well. So if they play similarly to how they did against Algeria, where they play a very high press and they completely suffocate Morocco's midfield, that could be a big advantage for Nigeria in this game. Now, with all that being said, who do I think is going to win between Morocco and Nigeria? I predicted that Morocco were going to get eliminated in the last round against Cameroon, and that was a bad prediction because obviously they ended up smoking Cameroon. But in this round against Nigeria, I feel like Nigeria are coming into this tournament with some ferocity, with some passion. They missed out on 2 World Cups and they can't afford to lose this tournament. Now, obviously, Morocco are the hosts, but with that being said, I think Nigeria will pretty comfortably win this game. I'm going to predict Nigeria to score 3 goals against Morocco, and Nigeria will win this game 3-1. And that's the end of this video. Those were my 2025 AFCON semi-final predictions, where I think Senegal will beat Egypt and Nigeria will beat Morocco, and both Northern African teams will sadly be eliminated. As always, if you agree with my predictions, remember to leave a comment down below. But if you disagree with my predictions and you think either Morocco or Egypt will end up making it to the final, remember to leave your comments down below and I'll be sure to reply to every single comment. And obviously, if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and stay tuned for more videos.